Hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. I have my good friend Jason with me. Say hello to everyone, Jason.
Hello, Jason.
All right. And for tonight's podcast episode, we're actually going to be doing a review on Pixar's new movie, Soul. This movie actually came out on December 25th, the same day as Wonder Woman. This was actually one of my other anticipated films aside from Wonder Woman 1984. And this movie stars Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, Graham Norton, and then of course this movie also clocks in an hour and 40 minutes long, which is actually perfect for a runtime for something like this. Because when you look at Pixar movies and stuff like that, you actually think of the runtime about 2 hours long, especially when you're dealing with like movies like Coco and other films. But this movie's actually an hour and 40 minutes, which is something that I really like. You can actually take in some of the deep cuts that they actually put into this movie and a lot of heart and soul, if you will, into this film. And that's something that I really appreciated from this movie is that it does have a lot of heart in it. Matter of fact, the main character is named Joe. He's a middle school band teacher whose life hasn't quite gone the way he expected it to go. His passion is jazz. He's good and he's good at it. But when he travels to another realm to help 22 find her passion, and he soon discovers what it means to actually have a soul. But also too, how does he actually get into the other realm and everything? He actually some stuff winds up happening to where his life is actually coming together a little bit for him, and then he winds up stepping on a manhole, and he winds up supposedly dying and going into the other realm. So the opening scene, I really have to say, was really good. I've liked how they first introduce us to Joe. He's actually a band teacher, and he's actually trying to inspire other kids to actually go with jazz and stuff like that. There's actually this one girl who is actually the only one that's pretty much passionate inside that whole entire room about what she's doing, because when she gets up and she plays her horn and everything, that trombone, it was just awesome to actually see her play that. What about you, man? What did you think?
Her name was Connie, by the way.
Yeah,
Connie,
Connie.
that scene. Well, just to back up a second, I love how they changed up the Pixar intro to where
Mm-hmm.
instead of it being like the traditional professional music, it was the middle school. It was Joe saying, "Okay, from literally from the top," and like it's a middle school band playing the Pixar music. I thought that was really cute, and yeah, Connie was the first one that stood out in that scene, and she kind of introduced us to the concept of inspiration, because like you could tell Joe was just really bored, and Connie inspired Joe, and that's why he started telling the story of when he was a kid at the Half Note Club. So it was a great beginning.
I love that whole entire scene too, because he's like, "Oh, I don't like jazz. I don't want nothing to do with jazz." Up until his father actually drags him into this jazz club and everything, and then he gets inspired to actually have a spark to actually want to do jazz. And that's something that I
Yeah,
really liked, was the fact that he found his spark through his father, who also
yeah,
had a spark for jazz, and it's inspirational. I like the fact
yeah,
of how it's actually relatable, because how many of our own parents actually drag us out to something that we may not like, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
before you know it, we wind up having the same kind of act that they do for something that maybe their hobbies or their music and stuff like that, and we're just influenced by what they like. So it's very relatable. That's
Yeah.
something that I have to say too.
My mom did that to me. Like when I was 5 years old, she took me to the movies, and I have a very distinct memory of being 5 years old and my mom waking me up saying, "Hey, we're going to go see Yoda," and we went and saw Return of the Jedi. I can remember that day vividly. So I connect with Joe on that very deeply, because I had the same thing happen when I was 5.
That's awesome, man. Hold on. Tara says hello. Let's see. Hey,
Hello,
Tara, how
Tara.
you doing?
What up?
And let's
By
see.
the way,
That's something.
even more guest starring tonight is Lloyd.
And Lloyd is adorable.
he
His little puppy is actually adorable. Um, so that's actually something that is actually relatable to me as well. Like the very first movie I actually saw was the 1989 Batman movie with
Oh,
Michael
okay.
Keaton. So
All
I
right.
was able to relate to that as well with you with Return of the Jedi. I wish I was actually born during that era, because I would
Mm.
actually be eating popcorn with you and stuff in my face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it is what it is. But I like the fact that it's he's relate. These characters are actually relatable, like I
Oh,
said.
yeah.
But Joe is just one of those people that I feel like that people can gravitate towards, because we always feel like things are not going right in our lives or anything like
Yeah.
that. So You know,
I want to say something real quick about Joe, and let me preface this with, I told you, I took 7 pages of notes of this. There's too much. There's too much of this movie. I
there's
had
no such
boiled
thing
my.
as too much on this podcast.
There's way too much, but I boiled it down to 3 points. But something I want to say about Joe that's just so important is that finally we had an African American cast. We had an African American Pixar film, and something that Sandra Bullock said about the Black Panther was that her adopted kids that are African American finally had something to look up to in the superhero realm. And I had to believe that the kids watching this must be going through the same thing, that they had something that they could relate to on a deeper level. So I just wanted to throw that
I can
out there.
access that. Yeah, that's actually something I was thinking about too. And matter of fact, I was thinking, okay, when we were introduced in the world of Coco, we actually had the Day of the Dead. We had the whole entire Spanish traditions and stuff. With this one, I was thinking, okay,
I haven't seen Coco yet, by the way. I haven't seen that one yet.
It's a great film, but you know, they always get us with these themes and everything when you look at movies and stuff like that with the Pixar movies.
Yeah.
But what I appreciate, what I thought that I was going to be introduced to was the world of New Orleans because of jazz, because of blues. The whole New York bit actually enhanced my experience a lot more because of the fact that they did a whole misdirection for me because of the fact that it didn't take place in New Orleans like I thought. It took place in New York.
I didn't even think of that.
So I like that they actually fooled me with that. Let's see here. Tara said that she loves Black Panther. That was an amazing movie. Yes, it was. That was a fantastic movie. One of my favorite movies of that year.
Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace.
Definitely. So another thing too is this: once he gets into that manhole and everything, and then he ends up in the great beyond. And I like at first how they have like this little escalator going up into the great beyond, and there's this white light. And I like whenever he's just looking up, he's looking up at it, he goes, "What's that?" And I was like, "That's the great beyond. I've been waiting my whole life for this. That's the great what?" And all of a sudden you see them being zapped like mosquitoes, and then he's trying to get away. And then of course that's when he winds up into the great before, where he meets Jerry.
I want to back up for a second. I just wanted to say I thought it was very respectful to all religions that they conquered death in the afterlife without it being any one religion or spirituality. It was very respectful in that sense. Sorry, I didn't mean I'm going to interrupt you 4,000 times tonight. I have extreme ADD, so.
Dude, it's fine. Interrupt me as much as you want. You know, just be yourself. You're fine, dude. You're fine, man.
All right.
But you know, that's something I have to admit though too was the unity with everybody. Everybody was like in one unity together, experiencing this whole entire thing with them being into the great beyond, which is something that I really respected.
They had people that spoke a different language too, so it wasn't just any one race, religion, creed. They had different kind of people. It was very inclusive, and its diversity in this film.
Definitely very diverse. The casting is very diverse as well. I also liked it too when, of course, I also want to back up a little bit though too, because even then you actually see a little bit of what's going on with Joe at the very beginning, where he's afraid of his mom because his mom's always putting him down because she's always saying, "Oh, there's always one more gig. This one's bigger than the next." The only ones that actually have his back is his mom's friends who actually works in that tailor shop.
Lulu and Gabby.
Yep. And I love those two characters to death because they're like, "We have your back, Joe. We're gonna fully support you no matter what. We don't care what your mom says or anything." That's something that I really liked about it. They encourage him, give him confidence, but whenever he gets in that room with her, he just totally just shuts down. And then also too, at first I didn't know what to make of the jazz singer that he was actually auditioning for, because at first she kind of seemed kind of douchey, and then once he started getting the rhythm going and everything on the piano, once he gets into that zone that he gets in with playing the piano, she's actually feeling the vibe with Joe. They're both zoning in to the moment and everything. So it actually feels like they actually have some chemistry built onto that set. At first I'm like, okay, she's really pressuring him. And everything. I feel like that she was kind of being douchey a little bit, but that's just the way that I was receiving it. I don't know if you received it differently.
I made a mistake. It was Lulu and Melba The two
Okay.
ladies outside, their names were Lulu and Melba, and you already know that one of my most prominent things that I noticed in this film had to do with the mom, and we'll go into that later. I've gone on and on about it, but the influences of external contributing factors has so much to do with this movie, and it's reflected in 22 and Joe, and how Joe affected 22 and how 22 affected Joe. And so I could go on and on.
But yeah, so now we're just gonna go on ahead, go into the great. We talked about the great beyond, but now we're gonna go into the great before, and that's something that I really thought was actually pretty cool. Was how, you know, all of a sudden he winds up supposedly cheating death and everything because he winds up going into the great before, and then of course that's when he goes into that seminar where he actually has to take on the responsibility of trying to spark another soul to go down to Earth.
Instead of dying, he chose to become a mentor.
Right, which I thought was actually pretty cool.
By the way, I loved the Jerrys. I don't know if you noticed this, but the Jerrys were in control of the souls, and they did this thing, quiet coyote, quiet coyote. Yeah. That was, and they were like, hell, hell, hell. That was just, I started this whole thing with saying there's too much to go into with this movie, especially for someone with ADD. But yeah, the Great Before had a lot of great stuff.
The Great Before had a lot of great stuff going on. I love the Jerrys, and also too, who was the counter? The guy who was actually doing the counting?
Terry, the accountant.
Terry. Yeah, the accountant part made me laugh though too. And he seems all proudful of himself. He goes, I never made a mistake before. I never missed one single number.
If
and
you notice,
the Jerrys are just messing with them.
The trophy he decided that he gets, he's the one that decided to give to himself. But
right.
But that was his purpose in life. That was his spark.
Right.
His whatever is counting. And I told you before, there was no antagonist in this film. So Terry was kind of the closest thing we had to an antagonist in this.
Right, but all he wanted to do was set the wrong things right and put everything back in order.
But
so he was just doing his job.
That's his
right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm fighting a double ear infection, so I'm constantly drinking fluids. So I'm not getting drunk on you. I'm drinking fluids.
It's okay. But yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool. But then I liked how he actually has to mentor 21, and 21 goes through all the people that were trying to mentor her. Yeah. Like the Muhammad Ali bit. Yeah, like 20. Whenever he went to the Muhammad Ali bit. And he goes, that's it. He just throws off his gloves. I'm done.
Yeah.
And then the Mother Teresa, when she bit was actually funny too. They all gave up on her and everything. Yeah. And then I also like the part where, you know, Joe winds up asking her, how do you wind up talking like a middle-aged woman? He goes, oh, I can change my voice to different voices. And then she mimics him.
I actually read. Go ahead.
And then she mimics him, and then but this is what she says. She said, "But this one annoys everybody, so I'm just going to keep this one."
A middle-aged white lady, a middle-aged white lady. That they did that on purpose. Yeah, I read about that.
That was actually pretty funny. I thought that was that actually added to the character because it makes her sound like she's a lot more grown up than being actually a personality in somebody else's head whenever she goes onto Earth to be a child. So I thought that was actually pretty cool that they actually did that. Then there's actually the other stuff that I really liked about this movie too, was the fact that, you know, as he's going through the motions of trying to get that spark for her, he's like, well, what about basketball? No.
The Knicks.
What about the Knicks? Oh yeah, that's whenever they go into the zone part though. Yeah, but this is just them trying to find her spark though. Because remember, he goes, what about bagel shops? Oh, I always wanted to work at a bagel shop. So that way I know when the government's going to shut down, I know that I'll be out of business.
That was the library. Yeah,
the library. Right. And then she goes, well, I always wanted to tell people, shh.
And then she does it to Joe.
Right. And the cool thing about that, though, is the score. When she does the whole bit, the score also quiets down too and breaks away a
Huh.
little bit
I
and
did
everything.
not
I don't know
notice
if you
that.
noticed that.
No, no, no,
Yeah,
no.
it actually does like a
That,
little skip and it goes back to being kind of loud and then she does it again and it kind of skips again. So I thought that was actually pretty
dynamics,
cool that they
yeah,
went
yeah,
along
yeah,
with the
yeah.
character. But then the gymnastics thing, she goes, nah.
Nah.
And then,
The firefighter's like,
but,
I want to make the fire grow. Nah.
and then of course, they go into the whole entire zone thing, which is something that I really like. The zone, when we all get into our zones and everything, we're just glued into either
Yeah,
acting or we're actually
yeah,
glued into our performances and everything. We go into a place in their realm called the zone, the zone, and in the zone, and in the zone and everything, that's when you're really glued into everything. But something always messes it up to the
yeah.
point where you might actually forget something. And that's when 22 goes on ahead and throws something at you to make you forget your line. For instance, the Romeo and Juliet bit and everything.
Line.
And and then there's also the Knicks, which was my favorite part of the part though too. Where she throws something at the Knicks player and then all of a sudden he just misses the slam dunk. Because I've been messing with them for years.
And the
So
Knicks lose again.
you know what? From now on, whenever I actually forget something, I'm gonna blame 22 for every single
You
time I
should.
forget something.
You should.
That's what I'm probably gonna do. Uh, but I like that part. The originality behind the different realms was really good.
Uh-huh.
I also like it when Moonwind comes into play. Uh, I thought he was actually pretty cool for like a hippie that's actually just meditating out in New York City, and he
Moonwind
comes in
Star
and
Dancer.
yeah, Star Dancer, and he just comes in on this big pirate ship, and and 22 goes on board, and I like how he actually was able to bring different people back to their bodies and everything, but their souls back
Yeah,
into their body.
yeah.
And especially whenever this guy is dead, he comes back to life and in the office area, and he's just like, you know what? I just had a breakthrough. Everybody,
Hmm.
just put your stuff down. What are you
Yeah.
doing? Next thing you know, it just goes berserk inside the office
Because he
and
was a lost
everything.
soul. He was a lost soul.
Right,
His passion became an obsession, and he became a lost soul. And they fixed it because it was a Tuesday, and they could do that.
right. And get this, we're actually doing this on a Tuesday, which also
I
represents the
know.
movie.
On Tuesdays we dance. Anyway, anywho, yeah, yeah,
So then after that winds up happening, we actually have Moonwind, Star Dancer. He goes on ahead and draws a circle for Joe, and he
hmm,
realizes that he's actually dead. So we never actually put someone that's already dead and back into a soul before. So he actually had to go through a different way and different process of doing it, which is meditation inside
yeah,
that realm with Joe. And then as Joe saw himself, he immediately was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to hop right back in and everything. And then all of a sudden, 22's in his body, and then
yeah.
he's in the cat's body. And it's totally bonkers.
I think though that from Joe's point of view, though, I don't think Joe knew if he was dead or alive. I think that he just knew that
Right.
he went to the great beyond. I don't think that he knew that he was still alive. And in fact, they even
No.
made reference like, "Oh, Joe, you're dead," and he kind of was like, "Ah," but Joe was still alive. He was just in a
Right.
coma. And he got so
Right.
excited as Moonwind was trying to help them get into their bodies. He got overly excited, and that's when the great snafu happens. And Joe
Right.
goes into Mr. Mittens, and 22 goes into Joe's body.
Which I thought was really funny because it's like reincarnation in a sense.
And that's when the
And
whole change of perspective happens, where it's like there's a lot of perspective shifts in this movie, a lot of them, and that's that was a great little gag when Joe goes into the body of the cat. Just tons of hijinks happens after that.
right, especially when he wakes up out of the coma and
Hmm.
Joe's trying to tell him what to do and what not to say. And he goes, you know what? I woke up like this. Joe's in the cat. And the woman's like, okay, we're just gonna have to hold you in for psychiatric help.
Maybe that
Please hold
medicine
on.
didn't work.
Maybe a little too well,
Yeah.
but then the cat's over there. Go, what are you doing? You're crazy. You're gonna wind up putting me in a nut house. And then all you see is right. So I definitely love that. That's something I was wondering about though too. Was when we got into the cat's body and he was talking to 22. I was wondering if regular people would actually hear Joe or if they would actually hear the aspect of the cat. So I'm actually glad that they actually did it to the aspect of the cat rather than hearing Joe.
It's that
Because
play
it
on
gives it more of a
perspective
tone.
again. It's that
Right.
play on perspective again, yeah.
And then we don't know how long Joe has actually been laying down there in that bed. So he needs a lot of therapy just to get around. And 22's over there in this tall, lanky body. He also doesn't know how to actually operate Joe. It's kind of like operating a crane for the very first time without an OSHA license. And he's trying to steer the wheels and everything. It's just not working out. And then of course he's also in a hospital gown. He walks out of the thing and he's not used to the noises either.
Yeah, when the doors open up and they go out, when they go out to New York City, 22 is just completely on overload. Like, oh my God, what is going on?
And that's something that I thought that was actually pretty cool. But to me, when 22 is just experimenting with the subway, when he's also experimenting with the breeze from underneath, that reminds me of something of just treasuring the little things that actually matter that we actually take for granted every single day, because we never know when our day is the last day that we're actually going to be able to do something like go down the subway, ride with everybody, or right. So that's something that I was thinking of whenever I was watching that. And also too, like I said, I liked it whenever he first tried the pizza. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
Because remember, there's no taste or smell in the grape before either. So they couldn't smell the. So it takes away, like if you're training a person, a soul, it takes a lot to actually try and train this person to actually be excited for Earth without texture, without taste, and everything. So we're going to get into that later on, though.
The pizza crust is the first thing that 22 puts in her pocket. Because at the end of the film, she's got all the things in her pocket that she loved. And the pizza crust is the first thing that she kept.
Right. And that's something that I actually enjoyed was the pizza crust scene. And then, he's hubbed over into that little alley, little stoop, eating the pizza. And then after that happens, they go over to his mom's tailor's shop.
Yep.
I believe. And, because of the fact that when they went up to his apartment, he tried on the clothes and everything, of course. The clothes felt kind of tight. And then whenever 22 went on ahead and bent down whenever they were leaving, his pants ripped. So therefore they had to go to his mom's tailor shop. Yep. And 22's like, it's okay, I'll be fine and everything. We can go to your mom's and everything. He goes, no, we can't go there. We cannot go to my mom's. I'm not going to go to my mom's. But 22 is like is fearless. She doesn't care. Yeah. She actually boosted his confidence to actually stand up to his mother, which is something that I really like. Yep. And I like when we actually see name those two characters again that was from the tailor shop.
Lulu and I called her Melba earlier accidentally. Yep. Lulu, Lulu and Melba. And
all right, I like that when Lulu. Right. And which one did he actually kiss? Because remember when one of the characters tell him, "Hey, look, can you give me a kiss?" And they thinking that he's just going to give her a kiss on the cheek. Instead, he gives her a full-blown kiss.
Yeah. I'm not sure which one it was. Yeah.
Me either, but I thought that was actually pretty funny. And then he goes into where his mom is, and that's when
that beautiful scene happens that I saw. No one, I don't think anyone else caught it. I didn't catch it the first time, but there's this beautiful shift on perspective that I told you about, and I don't know if this is where we put that in, but there's a scene
we can
where. So, okay, the first time I watched this movie, I didn't catch this, but the second time it happened. There's something that happened, and I literally had to rewind it. I was like, wait a second. Joe's voice is coming out of Joe's body. I was like, what? So I rewound it, and 22 and Joe are trying to talk to the mom, and Joe is trying to tell the cat, Joe. It's so hard. It's so hard to describe, but Joe, as Mr. Mittens, says, "Okay, tell mom this," and then the camera pans and it goes behind the mom's head, and as it does that, that's when the voice changes from coming out of Mr. Mittens' mouth to
Joe.
long story short, the shift in perspective goes from the audience to the mom. We're seeing it from the mom's perspective, hearing Joe's voice coming out of Joe's body. And it's the simplest thing, but man, it was one of my 3 favorite parts of the whole movie, because it really demonstrated one of the main themes of this movie being that we all have different perspectives, and that sometimes our own perspective shifts because of someone else.
That's true. Because don't forget, we've seen her pretty much downplay him, putting him down to the point where he has like zero confidence in himself.
Yep.
And things like that. And I
Which
just feel bad for the guy.
But that's exactly what Joe does to 22 when she has her epiphany, and she's like, "Oh, I love all these things." And Joe's like, those aren't sparks. That's not this. And that's what sets her up to become a lost soul. So it's funny how all these things kind of parallel into each other. This movie is filled with that.
It definitely is. And another thing, though, too, we didn't actually catch. Remember when Joe's going through all his memories, though, too? And he actually says, "My life was meaningless." And I'm like, wow, how many of us actually go through that, where we think that our life is actually more than what we are, or we are more than what our life is? I'm glad
you brought that up, because that's at the beginning of the movie, where at first they're seeing life through Dr. Bjornstein's life, but he's like, "Hey, I want to show you my life." So 22 makes him touch that thing, and we see the reflection of Joe's life. And if you notice, it's all of Joe's failures, and it's kind of sad and depressed in tone. And if you notice, one of the things that he remembers is this very passive little scene where he's sad and alone, and he's eating a piece of pie. At the end, when he's thinking of all the beautiful thing that happens, it shows him eating the piece of pie and enjoying it. It's this beautiful parallel that goes back to the beginning, that it wasn't so bad to begin with. That it ended up taking a really sad part of his life that he thought was a failure, and it was really one of the beautiful things. That pie thing got me at the end.
Right, because it's like looking in a mirror, right? Whereas like the outside looking in kind of thing into our life that we never thought we would actually look at from that perspective before. So that's something that I'm glad that you actually brought up, though, too, where Joe's actually looking into a mirror of his life and he's reflecting on everything that he's done. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. So now we're going to talk about the whole entire setup where Joe winds up. Like, I also like the part, though, too, where he's out in the barber chair and everything, too. Yeah, with Diz. And he thought that his spark was cutting here, but then he finds out that that was not his spark at all. It was veterinarian school. And Joe was like, "Wow, I thought that your spark was barbering." He goes, "Well, it was cheaper to go to barbering school than veterinarian school because of the fact that I have kids now." And then also, too, I liked it when 22 is also panicking because of the fact that, it was his first time having his haircut, or her haircut, rather. And so he goes, "Hey, can I have one of those suckers? Can I have one of those?"
The lollipops.
And next thing you know, he's just talking about life, how he was going deep. And everybody in that shop is like, "Man, what's in those lollipops?"
Did you notice the Colin Kaepernick reference? There's literally a character that's not standing but sitting in the barber chair. It was based off of Colin Kaepernick on purpose. That was a beautiful reference.
I need to actually see that. I need to actually go back and rewatch that part.
That's the thing about this movie. That's the thing about this movie. You watch it a couple of times. Like today was my 3rd time to watch it, and it's like an onion. It's just got tons of layers to it.
It does, and it's so deep, man. And this movie is very deep. Probably the deepest Pixar movie I've seen.
Oh, absolutely.
And everything, and we're gonna get to that later on, because I actually want to ask you a question towards the deepness of the movie and stuff like that.
Okay. Okay.
But uh, here's another thing though too. She winds up having that. Where does she get the donut at? That's another thing I forgot.
It wasn't. It wasn't a donut. It was a bagel.
Bagel. Yeah, where does she get the bagel from?
I can't remember where she gets it. I just know that it plays into the scene where they go down to the subway and she listens to music
Hmm.
vicariously through Joe's body. And the guy I believe it's John Baptiste that's singing. John Baptiste is the guy that does all the jazz. She gets so enamored that she breaks off a piece of the bagel, which she loves, and gives to him so selflessly, and puts it in the guitar case.
Right.
I don't know where they grabbed the bagel, but I just know that the bagel that's where he kind of shows up in the guitar case, and she puts a
Right.
part of it in her. It's one of the. There's actually 7 things in the end at the end of the movie. There's 7 things in her pocket that I will go into it later, but yeah, the
Right.
bagel.
Because that's also another moving thing is towards the end of that movie though too. And then of course, we have the whole entire lead up to where Joe winds up saying, well, those are not sparks. Those are just everyday things, everyday life. That's
when she
nothing.
has when she has the epiphany at the maple tree.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the maple tree
I,
thing,
I bawled,
I
just crying because if you notice the whole element of changing out of the old brown suit, which represented the old Joe, and going into Joe's father's suit, which so much symbolism in that, and the fact that the mom helped her do it, and they get done with it, and they go to the half note club, and he's about to go in and have his dream, and that's when 22 sits on the porch and she has the song is literally called Epiphany on the soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. And she looks across, she sees a little girl swinging, and then she looks over, she sees 2 friends laughing and making a joke, and then the wind blows and the leaves rustle, and she looks up and she sees the tree, and the most beautiful thing happens. The falling, spinning maple seed leaves are falling, which is total symbolism for the souls falling to earth. And then it happens. The seedling falls into her hand, and that's when it happens. And Joe literally says, "Hey, are you ready to go home now?" Which means, "Hey, are you ready to go to Earth now?"
right.
This movie is an onion. Just so many layers to this.
It definitely is, man. And hold on, this is what Tara had said though too. She said that is what I like about movies because there's so many details that every time you watch, there's different things that you don't remember that are part in the movie. I
Yeah,
agree. I agree with you
yeah.
on that.
So do I. So do I. And also, I talked to other people. I have a really good friend named Michelle about the movie, and something that really touched her was the lost souls part about how people that have passions that become obsessions, and when your passion leads to obsession, you disconnect from your soul, and like that's what happens to the hedge funder at the end, and you feel
Right.
like that's when you lose your purpose in life. I didn't even think of that until my friend Michelle had mentioned it, and so when I went back and I rewatched it,
Mm.
the movie is just so profoundly deep. It's just incredible.
It is. And you know what? I always said this to somebody because of the fact that there was this Facebook group I was a part of at one time, but ultimately this person's hobby, which is the group, ultimately became the obsession that actually destroyed her
Yeah.
reputation, destroyed everything. And before you know
Yes.
it, that Facebook group is gone and demolished because of her attitude, because of her whole entire ego and everything else. So that was actually relatable towards that for me, for
Yeah.
that part. So I was able to actually gravitate towards that.
You can't let your passion become an obsession because that's
Right.
when the disconnect happens. And
Yep.
this is a kids movie. This is a
Right.
cartoon, and it's just so. I feel like this was
See,
more for the grown-ups almost. You know?
right. And you see, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you feel like this movie would be too deep for kids to not comprehend to the point where they're just not even going to be worried about the plot or Joe or anything like that? They're not going to be even consumed by the colors. They're probably going to end up falling asleep watching this movie because they're not having any idea or concept what this movie's about.
I totally agree with that, and I could see where someone could think that. And truly, as a 42-year-old, I'll never know. But my honest opinion is, I think that kids are, um, I think kids are smart enough to be able to watch and catch things, and I think that the children are going to grow up with this movie. And as they grow, because how many times has this person's kid watched Toy Story 1, 2, and 3? They watch these movies a billion times. I really think that the kids are going to grow up and watching this, and I think that's the beauty of it. I think it's going to change for them. I think that the kids' perspective is going to change through their life, and that this movie is going to change and morph and develop, and they're going to. My dog is going nuts, and I think that the kids are going to. I see what you're saying. That it may, you know, and it may go. I think my dog has to pee. I think that
that wouldn't be good.
I think it could go over some kids' heads. I was the little dumb kid. You know, I was, you know, when I saw Return of the Jedi, I was like, oh, puppets. But there's a lot of extremely intelligent kids out there that are going to catch all these things. So that's the beauty of it. It's going to be different for every little kid around the world. You know, it's going to, and the more they watch it, the more that they're going to catch on.
Right, especially with the diversity that we talked about. Right.
Yeah. It's not going to be a stale, stagnant, watch once movie. I really see kids growing up with this one.
Right. I could probably see that as well. But it's just a question that was wondering about.
One thing I do feel very strongly about, I do not want to see a sequel to this movie.
No,
I do not want a sequel to this. Do not sequel this. This, at the very end, when Jerry asked him what he's going to do with his life, and he says, I'm going to live every minute of it. That's it. Boom, done.
Right.
Do not make a Soul Part 2. It's just...
No. Then it becomes soulless. no pun intended.
But yeah.
But, you know, I just feel like that is one and done. I think this movie is perfect the way it is. Also, too, when Joe actually realizes what he did and caused the pain, same pain that his own mother caused him, and he did it to her, did it to 22.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It broke me in shambles because of the fact that, you know, as he's going through this whole entire darkness with her, you see every single person that was trying to be a mentor towards her. And
like Des.
Look at all the damage and everything that was done to her.
Yeah.
And everything. And I'm like, I really wonder why. Right.
It really shows how everyone in this world can affect and inspire or derail other people.
Right. I can definitely see that. And also, too, like I was mentioning, was, you know, how many of us actually caused damage with our own insecurities and everything that was done to us, and we reflect it back to somebody else.
Absolutely.
And everything, too.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Let's see here. Tara said, I was never really quick at picking up the plot of the movie over time. I eventually will figure it out. That's true.
I think that is a beautiful metaphor for life, by the way, because none of us figure out, you know, like just beautiful metaphor.
It's a game of life.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so, okay, we got into the Lost Souls part. Joe actually has to go ahead and try and persuade 22 to go to Earth and everything, because at that point she actually does earn her badge. Like, once you see the badge and everything. And that was something that was just beautiful. And he's like, wait, how did you earn your badge? And then I also like how Joe is also glued in on the piano, playing the piano and meditating.
That's when he lays out the seven elements: the bagel, the lollipop, the spool, the Metro card, the take one paper, the pizza crust, and the maple tree seedling. Each one of those things put together, because the whole point was your spark isn't your purpose. It was all of those things that put together. That's how she got her Earth Pass. All of those things put together.
Right. And that's what makes you who the person you are.
Yeah.
That makes you have that spark. That's the thing. It's the little things in life that we miss. And everything too.
I love the symbolism behind them. I love that the symbolism represented love. I love that the lollipop represented Des and what she learned in the chair. The spool of thread represented the mom. The Metro card represented the man that yelled at her, that got her excited. The take one, the man with the van thing. The pizza cross representing Joe, and of course the maple tree seedling. Just when he laid him out and he plays the piano, it's just once again tears. Just you
Right.
just have a good cry.
It's total empathy. I mean, like I think
Oh,
it's beautifully well named. I think it's a perfect title for that song and everything. I think it's
yeah.
perfect. And so now we got that. What else did you want to add to it?
I will say this. I bought the vinyl soundtrack, which I have behind me. The first time I listened to Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score, I listened to the whole thing on vinyl. And what's crazy is that the first song that stuck out to me, that struck a chord, was just this random song called Epiphany. At this point, I had not seen the movie at all whatsoever, but Epiphany on the piano, just it really moved me. So when I watched the
Mm-hmm.
movie, as the maple seedlings fall, I was like, man, this is just it's just between the maple tree seedlings fall, and then when Joe's at the piano and he spreads out the seven elements in front of him, just very powerful stuff.
It really is. And you know what? I didn't even know Trent actually was the composer for this movie up until you
Hmm.
bought the vinyl and you
Yep.
actually posted it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I have to get the soundtrack now because I like when Trent actually goes ahead and does the scores for movies and things like that, especially with the girl with the
Yeah.
dragon tattoo for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
North
Yeah.
American version. I love that
Yeah.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
You know me,
J-
you and I are both big Nine Inch Nails fans, anyways. But
Love
you
them.
know,
Love them. And really, Nine Inch Nails is just Trent Reznor. Trent Reznor is
right?
the person that made the entire album of like the first 4 or 5 albums. Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor actually worked on a project together called Ghosts, and it was
Ah,
it was actually completely improv. They made it all up on the spot. If you buy the album, the very first Ghost album, it's actually all improv. They did it on the spot. It was actually the audition for him to do the soundtrack for the Social Network. That's how he got the Social Network job.
mm,
And he actually ended up recording it and releasing it as an album. And then one of the songs ended up becoming the Little Nas song. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Little Nas, Billy Ray Cyrus song.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
know what you're talking about.
uh, just there's a reason why Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross have an Oscar for doing what they do. I mean,
Right.
just obviously you've got the shirt on. Trent is just, and here's the thing: it wasn't just Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. There's a jazz musician named John Baptiste that did all the jazz arrangements. It just
Okay.
excellent music. This film
And you
had
know what?
excellent music.
I thought that I heard a little bit of ghost coming from some of those themes with Trent
Hmm.
and him.
Yeah,
So that actually makes sense now. Now that you actually
yeah,
mentioned that he was actually a part of Ghost, because I
yeah.
remember hearing aspects of that on the soundtrack and then referring back over to Ghost and everything
No,
for
I
the Nine
mean
Inch Nails
no,
album.
no. I'm talking about the Nine Inch Nails album called Ghosts.
Yeah,
Not
yeah, that's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about.
And
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
talking about the similarities between the two of them, about
Mhm.
how they sound similar in a sense to where they both reference each other.
Do you know what I
So that
just
made
realized?
me,
I'm
what's
sorry.
that?
I just had my own like epiphany. The whole entire Ghost album was improv. They just made it up, and this movie is all about improvised music. I just caught that. That's just so. It's just, of
It's
course,
just great.
yeah. But Dorothea Williams, the character Dorothea Williams, she plays the tenor sax. That was actually one of the instruments that Trent plays. He plays the when he was in high school. He played his grandmother put him on piano lessons, but he also played tenor sax as well as the tuba.
Right. Another thing though too is when Connie comes over to visit Joe and everything too, 22 actually encouraged her to stay with it, even though she's actually pretending to actually make her quit the band.
And she was like, "I hate music." She didn't like music, but she actually ended up inspiring her to stay in. Just yeah,
Right. So
great,
I
great
definitely love
scene with
that.
Connie. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, if I have to rate this, it's a perfect 5 for me. I mean,
Oh,
it's a 5 out of 5 for me without a
absolutely.
single. Now, let's talk about some stuff that you went through recently and everything
Oh,
too,
geez. Yeah, 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 yeah.
because that's what I wanted to actually capture though,
It's a
because of
great
the fact,
parallel. Yeah.
right? Because I kind of now this is what I got out of this whole thing was we saw this movie. everything that you went through in the last several months. You see this movie, you're seeing things through a different angle now compared to where you were before.
Different
And I have to hand,
perspective.
yep, perspectives. And I just want to say this, man, I'm proud of you for the changes that you've made
Oh,
and
thanks.
everything. And you, like I said, you also inspired me to want to actually try and work out now and stuff like that
Yeah.
too, where it's better for my health. So I'm gonna start
Yeah.
doing that soon. But you had the coronavirus, man. You've went through
Yeah.
above and beyond everything. Let's talk about that.
All right. So July 14th, I had a really sore throat and I thought I had tonsillitis. I go to the VA hospital, and that's when it started. I wasn't allowed to go into the emergency room. They made me go into and remember, I'm a disabled vet, so I go to the VA. When I went to the hospital because I had a sore throat, I had to go into a militarized COVID tent. And there's no way I could describe that to you, but I actually had a lot of PTSD being in that tent. I had a guy sit down right next to me that told me that he had not only COVID, but he had pneumonia. I freaked out. But the whole point of July 14th is that was the day we found out that I suffer from tachycardia, which is my heartbeat goes too fast. So from
Ooh.
July 14th to August 30th, I had 3 or 4 tachycardic attacks where I had to go to the hospital. August 30th, I went into what I refer to as D-Day, and that's when I went into supraventricular tachycardia. That's the point where my heart was racing so fast. There's no other way to say it that I called 911. I was like, this is it. I'm dying. I really thought I was dying. I believe it if you want or not, I saw death drive by. I don't even want to go into that, but I saw a death. 2 seconds later, I was in the arms of the paramedic. He said, and I quote, he's about to pop. And that's when I had what caused all of this drama. I had what would end up being 4 failed adenosine pushes. So, you know, in the movies where you see someone like that's knocked out and they get jump started like a Jeep.
Right.
So since I was awake, they couldn't do that. I had an adenosine push, which is a chemical cardio conversion, whereas the shock is an electrical cardio conversion. So anywho, I had my first adenosine push, and they didn't tell me it was about to happen. And I grabbed the paramedic's arm, and I go, I'm dying, I'm dying. And he goes, no, we should have told you we're giving you an adenosine push. It feels like death because an adenosine push actually stops your heart for like 3 to 5 seconds. So for 3 to 5
Oh.
seconds, your brain's going, but the rest of your body dies. And so I had the first 2 adenosine pushes in my front yard. They both failed, and they don't feel good. The second one, they doubled the dose, and when I had the adenosine push, I literally my physical body did that thing where it looks like you're getting shocked. When I did this, my soul floated out of my body, and my soul literally floated out of my body on the second one for the 3 to 5 seconds that I was gone. And then we rushed to the hospital. That's when they explained to me that I was still in SVT, supraventricular tachycardia. I had adenosine push number 3. Now, here's the thing. You're only allowed 4. So at this point, I'm in the hospital. I'm on the gurney. Every single staff member of the emergency room was surrounding me. And I go, Doc, why is everyone in this room? He goes, you're the most important patient in the entire hospital right now. We're trying to save your life. And so they sat me up and they put a pad on my chest, on my heart, and they put another one on my back. And I was a combat medic in the Army. I knew what those pads were for. I knew I was about to get
Right.
the shock. So they were like, all right, we're about to give you adenosine push number 4. If it fails, we're going to knock you out and we're going to shock you. And the 4th one failed. And I remember kind of waking up and things were better. 4 failed adenosine pushes. I literally had to check myself into therapy because my mom said it the other day. She goes, the 4 failed adenosine pushes gave you PTSD really bad because I was afraid to be awake because I just didn't know if my heart was just going to stop or whatever. And then while I was in the hospital, I suffered from sleep apnea. The best thing that could happen when your heart's going too fast is for it to slow down. You just kind of pass out and go to sleep. So every time that I would slow down and I would go to sleep, the nurses would come in running, rushing. They're like, "Oh, you're choking, you're not breathing." It's because I suffer from sleep apnea. At that point, I developed this mental problem where I did not feel safe asleep or awake. And I literally freaked out. And I told my brother, I was like, I got to check myself into the hospital. And I spent 8 days in the hospital in recovery. And when I got out, it just, the whole thing completely, that was me falling in the hole. That was me falling into and I fell
Right
into a
beyond.
hole.
Right.
Oh God. And it was very
Basically.
scary. It was really scary. And that was September 1st through September 8th. And when I checked into the hospital on September 1st, I weighed 330 pounds. And here's the thing, I had such a drive. I wanted to get better. I literally lost 15 pounds through diet and exercise while I was still in. And then when I got out, I kept it going. So that was from September 8th until something else happened. My mom got really sick and she ended up in the hospital. I was just really
Oh,
hardcore. I was
I
really
remember
hardcore.
that.
I was walking every day. I was posting about my walks, and that all stopped when my mom went into the hospital. And I really had to pay attention to my little brother and make sure he was okay. And I kind of started eating trashy. So my mom was in the hospital for like a week and a half. And then as soon as my mom, which by the way, that was terrible. And I really got through the time that my mom was in the hospital by listening to a song called The Great Below by Nine Inch Nails. And I watched a very
Yep.
particular performance of it. And I really meditated on it. And that's how I got through it. And then, of course, the day that my mom got out of the hospital, we all went to Hobby Lobby and we caught COVID. And that was the Friday. That was a Friday. And then on Monday, which was the 22nd, me and my brother got really sick. It was the 22nd of November. On the 25th, I was tested for COVID. I found out I was positive on the 27th. And so we went through COVID and it was awful. I was in this room by myself. My mom was in her room. My brother was in his room. My brother is still going through like post-COVID syndrome symptoms. And so am I. We're all like, my hair fell out. I had to get a haircut. It's been rough. It's been a rough
I know.
couple of months. But then on December 8th, I brought home this little guy. And let me tell you something.
Hey, boy.
This little guy, man, he really brought my whole family together. I mean, like the whole it just so yeah, it's been rough and I'm really ready to get back on the diet. Like from the time that September 1st started to the time that right before my mom went down to the hospital, I lost 40 pounds through nutrition and exercise because I had that desire. I did not want to die. Just like Joe, I did not want to die. I fought it and I fought it and I fought it and I ran from the great beyond. I ran from the great beyond. I was like, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die. And just
I'm glad you're still
COVID.
here, man. Like,
Yeah. It's been just insane. And here's the thing. What I really want to drive home about all of this, I am not special. Everyone on this earth right now is going through COVID. Everyone's going through their mom being sick. Everyone's got their own perspective. Everyone's got their own thing going on. So, I mean, I'm not special. I'm not different. We're all going through it. And at the end of the day, my mom's still alive. My brother's still alive. I'm still alive. I got my Lloyd. So, just like Joe says at the end of the movie, I'm going to spend every minute of it living. I'm going to do my best just to not take life for granted and just do my best to live life.
right.
And just
Exactly.
I pray for all of us 2021 turns around because 2020 was a harsh mistress for the entire world. I mean, COVID has
I
now
agree.
reached COVID has now reached every body of land in the world. And I remember being in my truck in my happy place before going in to watch Cats and hearing them talk about COVID, and I knew it was coming. I knew this time last year, I knew it was coming. And I think that that's when I found that happiness of, okay, this is what my happy place is. Doesn't matter what it is, no matter how bad or dark or abandoned you feel. If you can find happiness in your life, if you can find your spark, if you can find your purpose, hold on to that shit. Don't let it go. And don't let anyone tell you any different, you know?
Exactly,
So
man.
it's come full circle in the last year.
Let's see. Tara actually has some stuff to say to you. She goes, I bet I have a cat to help me with depression and anxiety. She goes, I'm glad you're here too, Jason.
Aw,
And
well,
you're Rocky.
yeah. Well,
But,
I'm glad. I'm glad everyone that's here is here. You know,
right.
I
And like I said, your inspiration though, man. I mean, I know
oh
that
well,
I'm just gonna say that. I mean, look, anybody else would have given up and everything and stuff like that, but you fought right on through all that. I know it was difficult for you, all those trials and tribulations and everything,
yeah,
and
yeah.
now you can actually inspire others and everything too. And that's just an amazing thing where you experienced this thing that was so scary
Yeah.
for you, and now you actually get to be a beacon. You actually get to be a light in somebody else's life, and
I
to
don't
where you can actually let that light shine.
I don't want anyone in this world, whether they are a friend or an enemy, I don't want anyone to ever go through 4 failed adenosine pushes. It was just, I don't want anyone to ever go through that.
No,
I don't want to go through it again. I don't. That's why I had to give up all forms of cannabis. I had to quit drinking. I told my mom, I was like, oh, the party's over. And she goes, no, Jason, another party just began. And she was so
right,
right. She was so right. You know, the party isn't over.
right.
Another party just began.
Exactly, man. You know, when one party leaves, there's always another party. It may look different, people
Yeah,
may
yeah.
look different and everything,
It's
but it's still a party,
it,
you
it,
know?
it all it all goes back to that shift in perspective. And I'm so glad that
Right.
you and I have talked about doing a podcast for a long time. I'm really glad we started with Soul because
Me too.
it really
I felt like
it
the
just
timing, to me, I felt like the timing is right for this,
yeah,
for us to actually do this, especially
yeah,
everything you've been through. And you
yeah,
wanted to lay everything down and everything tonight, though, too,
yeah,
you know? And I felt like this, doing the movie review and then doing this perspective
yeah,
and everything, I
yeah.
think this was a way to actually bring things into perspective and to be a beacon into somebody else's life and everything, too. We also have someone from Australia. Hello, Susie. Thank you again for commenting. Thank you again last
Hello,
night. Good
hello.
eye, Mike. But yeah,
G'day, mate.
uh, but
I, I,
yeah,
I feel like I've been a terrible guest. I feel like I've been interrupting you and stuff like that. I've never done anything
no,
like that. So I hope I haven't
bro,
ruined your podcast.
no, dude, no. If anything, you enhanced it and everything. You gave a different perspective on life. You enhanced it. You didn't. You, matter of fact, you crushed this episode. I'm
I
just gonna be
killed
honest
it.
in a good way.
I
Yeah,
killed it.
you
I
killed it.
killed it.
And you know, man, I'm also gonna say this though too. I mean, I know that we talked about doing a podcast for a while. I would like to actually have you back on again. And of
All
course,
right,
you're
let's
also
do.
one of my admins. Plus, you're one of my admins for the page as well. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
another
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
So
Um, I like the movies that people don't like. I love Cats. I love Dark Phoenix. Like I own it. I stand by it. Like the movies that I like are not like. Please don't make me sit through the Wall Street.
hey, Roxy.
What was that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? The Wall Street whatever movie. What was that one called? With Margot Robbie and Leo DiCaprio.
Oh,
The Wolf of Wall
yeah,
Street.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
please don't make me sit through that. Like that's not my kind of
What?
movie. I know I didn't like that one. I was so bored. I didn't like it. I love the movies that people typically don't like Cats, Dark Phoenix. It
You
just
know, my friend Roxy. Every single time she would call me, I would always say I'm watching The Wolf of Wall Street, and she would go again.
yeah.
So, but you
Everyone
know,
has their own opinion though. That's the thing
right,
that I love
right.
about movies. Every
It's so
here's the thing.
subjective.
I hated the first time that I viewed Wonder Woman 84. God, I was just like, are you kidding? But and every time that I posted online something negative, someone posted, "Hey, I loved it." And I would make sure that I said, "I'm really glad that you liked it." And I genuinely
Right,
mean that because I don't like it when
right,
people tell me that the movies that I like,
right.
So that's the
Exactly.
beautiful thing. We all have a different perspective. And I have this big thing. I will always appreciate other people's perspective and opinion. I would never want to take it away from them.
Same. Same here, man. Like all movies are subjective. One person might see
Uh-huh.
this movie as a piece of art. Somebody might see as a piece of art as a piece of crap. You know, it's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
part
yeah.
of perspective again.
Yeah,
Another thing though too is, you know what? I think that I might actually do this as a challenge for a Patreon, or do something to
Okay.
where you challenge me to watch Cats, and you know me and Cats.
Oh my
You know me
God.
in that movie.
Here's the thing.
That would be like,
I do not suggest that anyone watches Cats sober. You really definitely need to be in an altered state of mind. Either it be alcohol or whatever whatever your drink of choice is, whatever it may be. If
yeah,
you know, like, but yeah, Cats. We'll talk. We'll go into more of that later. But I actually had a
yeah,
deeply profound learning experience. It really didn't have much to do with the movie. It had a little bit to do with the movie. It really had more or less to do with learning about life.
right. All right, so that's pretty much everything that we wanted to talk about with
Soul.
Soul. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to
No,
this or anything? Or,
no. I got to mention the
okay.
shift in perspective, the maple tree, and I loved that the pie scene was negative in the beginning when he thought his life was a failure, but at the end it was a good thing. It is a wonderful movie. 5 stars, 2 thumbs up.
I agree. And
Lloyd
Roxy, just to
approves.
answer your, I agree. And Roxy, just to answer your question, was it that bad? This was my face during the Cats previews. I was like this the whole time.
You know
But
what? I thought Cats was awful the first time I saw it. Like, I was like, "What in the hell just happened? Like, what is going on?" But we're gonna do a
but
Cats. We'll do an official Cats review sometime.
you know what? We might actually do. I wish there was like a way that YouTube didn't flag me to do like a reaction to me actually watching Cats and seeing how long I can actually go through watching Cats. That would
So
be the challenge.
you haven't seen it yet, correct?
No, I only saw the previews for.
The first time, I will say this: the first time you watch Cats, you have no idea what's going on. It's just like one cat sings a song and then another and then another. Like, it's just. I will admit that the first time you watch it, it is an attack on the senses. It really is.
Okay. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for the show. I appreciate you, Jason, for being on the show, man. I'm glad that we finally were able to do this. We've been talking about this for a while. It's great having you on. You crushed it. You did great.
Thank you for having me.
So you're very welcome, man, anytime. And I just want to mention this. I'm probably going to have Quentin Bennett back on the show he's actually the independent comic book writer that I actually interviewed a couple of months back. But I had him on again for the National Lampoon's Christmas movie review. I had him on there
Okay.
for that.
Okay.
And things like, and also Friday the 13th review, Weekend at Bernie. So I had him on here several other times.
All right.
But we're actually going to do a Star Wars what if scenario, making our own fan theories and stuff and everything. If this situation didn't happen, what would actually happen? So we're going to do that sometime soon. And I would like to actually invite you whenever we actually come up with a day for that.
I am down.
Okay. And another thing too, guys, if you guys want to, you guys don't have to. I understand this coronavirus has everybody wallets in shambles right now, but if you want to and you feel good-heartedly, go ahead, go to the GoFundMe page below. Another thing too, guys, is we're actually sponsored by Audible, and we're only sponsored by Audible until the end of the month. And you get your 30-day subscription if you go on ahead and hit the link below. And of course, guys, you guys can also follow me on Twitter at JohnDeGorio8, or you can follow me on Movie Lovers Unit. You can also email me at movieloversunite at gmail.com. And of course, we also have a Pinterest, Movie Lovers TV Lovers Unite. We also have a webpage for all your entertainment needs and wants. It's www.movieloversunite.com. And always, until next time, guys, it's been great. It's been wonderful. Have a happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, Jason. Always, until next time.